Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. This summer, Wisden are proudly sponsored by Kia UK. Kia are leading the way in electrification with their groundbreaking range of EVs, including the EV9, the EV6 and the UK Car of the Year, the EV3. Kia also have a commitment to movement that inspires and want to help cricket fans get closer to the action. Listen every week for Kia's Movement That Inspires moment for chances to win exciting experiences at the Kia Oval this summer. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. India pull off a remarkable recovery job in Manchester. They were 0 for 2 in the first over before lunch on Saturday. By Sunday evening, they had just lost 2 more wickets across 5 sessions in 143 overs in total. It's just the second draw in the Bazball era and the first one to take place when there's been no rain interrupting play. How did they do it? Did England get it wrong at all with the ball? Which bowlers are actually fit for the Oval? And when is the right time to shake hands? We'll be tackling all the big questions today. I'm Yas Rana. With me today are Phil Walker and Ben Gardner. But first, let's hear from Mark Butcher. Butch, for India to bat for 5 full sessions, losing just 2 wickets in those 5 sessions, having been 0 for 2, it's a remarkable achievement, and it's one that I guess shows the spirit in this India side under new leadership.
Too right. I mean, when they were 0 for 2, you thought they're dead. I mean, it was perfectly reasonable, and I'm sure all of those in the media, with all the 5-day test matches that have been racking up, would have been thinking to themselves, this could be over by the end of day 4, 0 for 2. But stunning performance, it really was from KL Rahul. What a player. I know it's Shubman Gill at the end of it is going to end up with 1,000 runs or something for the series. Maybe not that many. But KL Rahul, in terms of, all I've heard for the last God knows how many years is how impossible or how difficult it is to open the batting in England against a Duke's ball. Well, that this guy on not just on this tour but on the previous tour has made it look very, very straightforward. Technique is something that is, it's almost become a swear word in the game of cricket in recent times. But man, he's good. The defence is immaculate. Side on play, plays it late. Got all the strokes that you could ever want to go along with that as well. So it's not just technique over run scoring. What a fabulous player. He's definitely my favourite out of out of everybody on both sides. I just love watching him bat. And Shubman as well, again, just the mental fortitude to have been out there in the field for 160 overs, to see his bowlers flogged, to see Bumrah kind of bowling at 78 miles an hour by the end of it. His brain must have been frazzled, and he was out there straight away and played as serenely as he had done in the previous Test matches. So it was a terrific effort. I guess people say, well, the pitch was too flat, or England didn't have enough in the way of a cutting edge. I think some of those things are true, but then they don't tell the full story. I think the grit and the concentration shown by India was absolutely stunning and needed to be applauded. And kind of, I'm going to throw it back to Edgbaston and sort of go, England didn't have to bat anywhere near as long as that. And the series would be done perhaps if they'd managed to find the same sort of stomach for it. It was a heck of an achievement.
Yeah, and it's one that on paper you look at it and you see the final scorecard and India are only 4 down and it looks like they've done it quite comfortably. But they had so little batting beneath Jadeja. Pant was walking around in a moon boot. You had Shardul carded to come in next at 7 and 3 11s in Cambodge, Bumrah and Siraj. So Washington and Jadeja, after Gill got out, they had to do pretty much all the work, and that's what they did. And I think Washington is an amazing young player, isn't he? He's 25 years old. His recent record with bat and ball is phenomenal. Averages 45 with the bat in Test cricket and under 30 with the ball. And he's the only spinner in England, not just this summer, but even if you go back to the summer before it, and Nathan Lyon barely played in 2023, I don't think we've seen a finger spinner in England for quite a long time challenge both edges in the way that he does. The drift he gets on the ball is really unusual. And one of the talking points of the game was how under-bowled he was. He didn't come on until the 67th over. England were in an amazing position by the time Washington came in. And he really does challenge both edges for the England right-handers, which is unusual.
Yeah, he's we'll put it this way. I mean, Jadeja doesn't look like he's going to be retiring anytime soon, but when that day comes, as it inevitably does, then then India have got another potential six, definite seven, who is who's booked into the team, and then you decide to add Kuldeep maybe. I mean, we never see him. Where is he? You decide to add another spinner or make up your bowling attack depending on where you're playing. So he's been mighty impressive, and England have had a proper go at him as well. He kind of put himself in the firing line at Lords. And England took him down there, but the same hostile reaction, and that not reaction, but the same hostility was shown towards him in this game, and he stood up to every single bit of it. It was a very impressive performance, and has been a very impressive performance from him ever since he started. So the interesting thing, I guess, is you mentioned sort of challenging both edges, is how sort of little effect firstly Jadeja has had. Before that, Shoaib, of course, who's taken some important wickets over the course of the series, but generally speaking, was pretty ineffective. And then how Liam Dawson, who I thought bowled magnificently in India's first innings, did a terrific job in terms of holding the game. Got rid of Jai as well when he was threatening to go nuts. But then how ineffective both he and Jadeja have been. Final day of Test matches, rough outside left-handers off stump, and not being able to hit it. I was kind of screaming at the screen at times, and how we've been huge advocates of Liam Dawson, and remain to be so, because I don't think that there's and all of this is with the caveat that he is the best that England have right now. Obviously, you've got Tom Hartley and Rehan Ahmed taking 10 fors in the previous county matches, but at the moment, he's the number one spinner in the country, in my view. But just how little and how seldom that both he and Jadeja, given fifth wicket pitches, were able to hold a line wide enough to left-handed batters. I find it incredible. There's stuff about his action and the way that he crosses over a little bit with the front foot. Which makes it slightly more difficult, perhaps, to get the ball going on that wide line to the left-handers. But all I would say would be this: if you have the stumps at the bowler's end, and you shifted them over one set of stumps, and said now bowl, you'd be in a wider position on the crease, and your line that you normally bowl, which is just outside off stump, would then immediately go a stump and a half's width away from off stump. I still can't work out why it's so difficult. Jadeja found it tough, or didn't realise that was there to help him, and Dawson didn't do it anywhere near often enough when he had all that time to bowl at two left-handers in their mammoth partnership.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think more generally, it's something that we just see less of in the game these days. We don't see finger spinners target footmarks as much as we used to. I wonder,
but doesn't that blow your mind? I mean, it's kind of like, why would you? Why would you pass up the chance? You don't get any assistance. These pitches are not giving anybody any help, and you have something that you can use on a regular basis. And when the ball did go in there, it misbehaved, and both Jadeja and Washington looked uncomfortable. But why wouldn't you just do it 90% of the time, and then the straight one becomes bloody dangerous, So I don't know. I'm baffled by that.
Obviously, drop catches really hurt England. Gill dropped twice, and then the real killer, Jadeja, dropped first ball off Jofra Archer. With the old ball, England haven't really threatened that much this series. You talked about Dawson on the final day there.
Yeah.
But this test being different to the other ones in that there weren't any complaints, I think, about the ball all week. Yet England rarely threatened once the ball lost its shine and hardness. Why do you think that is? There's a stat from CricViz that was doing the rounds, which is that England's bowling average in overs 31 to 80 this series is 88. The worst old ball bowling average they have ever recorded in a series of 4 or more tests. They can't get Jadeja out. Jadeja's been out 4 times from 847 balls this series. The 4 leading run scorers in the series are all Indian players. England really are struggling to make inroads when the ball is old against the top 6, top 7.
Well, I came up with a theory last night, actually, listening back to Ben Stokes' interview with, was it with Athers yesterday? I can't remember. And he said, that against the right-handers, we managed to find some movement, or managed to get some invariable bounce, or whatever else. But against the left-handers, we didn't. And I thought to myself, and here's one for CricViz, and maybe you can get onto this after we finish. What percentage of deliveries were bowled round the wicket as opposed to over the wicket? Because as soon as I heard Ben say that, my brain went, well, okay, I watched yourself, as in Ben Stokes. I watched Jofra. I watched Bryden Cast bowl almost exclusively around the wicket to these left-handers. Now, if you're telling me that the ball was doing more in the way of indifferent bounce when you're bowling to the right-handers, surely then you'd have gone, okay, well, perhaps we don't bowl round the wicket quite so often, we bowl over. Now, of course, LBW becomes an issue from over the wicket if the ball's not swinging, because it's generally going to pitch outside the line of leg stump. But if the ball is going up and down, and if there is something happening from over the wicket, then you can go looking for leg side catches, a leg gully or short leg, and bowl over the wicket. Do it the old-fashioned way. Come over, target the body from that side, the odd full one, looking for nicks to the slips, and just change the angle. There was, and this is not a long time back actually, but in the days when bowling around the wicket wasn't quite so fashionable, the criticism of fast bowlers was, oh, you don't change the angle enough. You're always stuck going over the wicket to them. You need another weapon in coming round. Well, now it seems like it's the other way around. You're very, very stuck in terms of bowling around the wicket, because there's been some success with that. But when that doesn't work, can you go back over the wicket? I'd think about sort of the way that Washington Sundar was removed. I think it was at Lords with the short ball. Now I know for a fact, having done it, and I know also for a fact, if you don't want to take my word for it, from Kumar Sangakkara, and we both agreed on this, and we'd kept it quiet all the time we played. But there is a blind spot for all left-handers over the wicket to a certain length of delivery, to a certain line of delivery, that you lose a little bit, and therefore there is a weapon there to be had to a bowler who is accurate enough and quick enough from bowling over the wicket. It doesn't have to be exclusively short stuff, but there was another way, and I'm not entirely sure that England explored that enough, given what the captain himself said in terms of there was movement happening bowling to the righties but not to the lefties. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think more generally, though, it felt like England were spent both physically and mentally yesterday. And I think we're seeing the effects of having such a high-scoring series where they've been in the field for such long periods of time, and every bowler in that England attack, and actually probably everyone in the series other than Siraj for India, these bowlers coming into this, having not played a lot of cricket and having come into it with injuries, all of them pretty much. And I think we're seeing the effects of that now. I'm fascinated to see what England do selection-wise at the Oval. That starts in 3 days' time. These guys have bowled a lot of overs. Archer was well down in pace by the end yesterday. Bryden Cast was barely used. Ben Stokes restricted himself to just one spell and didn't bowl for a very long time on day 4. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they go.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I suppose from England's point of view, you're 2-1 up with the opportunity to go to win the series at Old Trafford, and so therefore they fielded what they felt was their strongest bowling lineup. And let's go back to the batting for a second. They managed to do something that Bazball teams have not done pretty much since the start, which is what they bat 160 overs. They actually batted at a tempo and in a style which put them in a great position to win the match and kept their bowlers off their feet for the best part of a day and 3/4. Good ticks both. Fantastic. You imagine what the bowlers would have looked like if they'd gone at 6 and over, got bowled out in 90 overs, and then had to go do the whole thing again. Now, number one, they wouldn't have had as many runs, but number two, the bowlers they're half dead now, but they would be fully dead if that had been the case. So a tick there on the batting side, and from India's point of view, their bowlers, as you said, looked very similar after the first innings, and they'd be very, very happy they didn't have to go out there and do it again. Um, for them, again, they played Thakur, a sort of a completely um, superfluous pick, really. Wouldn't it have been great? I mean, this is the other thing that popped into my head watching the end of the Test match. You're just thinking, geez, the Warney or Joe Denley, even. Joe Denley popped into my head yesterday. Wouldn't it have been great if England had been able to call upon part-time leg spinner Joe Denley on that pitch at Old Trafford, because maybe he might have been able to break the putt. But you know what I mean? Wrist spin and in those conditions is probably the one thing that can really sort of make a difference. But there was none to be seen. There you go, Joe. There's the headline for the pod. Joe Denley. Where was Joe Denley yesterday?
I did not think you were going to bring up Joe Denley. We actually, speaking of Joe Denley, we had an interview with him on the Patreon last week. It was really
caught a bit of that. Yeah.
It's really interesting. He's got a very, I suppose, reflective view on where cricket should be in one's priorities in life, and how having that approach later on in his career helped him out. Very interesting. Anyway, what have you thought about the pitches this series? 24 wickets across 5 days in Manchester. Again, we didn't really see any sort of deterioration, not that far off from what we saw at Edgbaston. The rate of scoring, whilst we were commending England for having a very grown-up approach on that, what was it, the third day, where they scored 300 runs across the day and didn't really go up through the gears that much at all. That is also partly a consequence of conditions and the pitch not having a lot of life in it.
Yeah.
Old Trafford this summer, there's not been a result in the Championship. And across the country, I get the sense that the weather, the unusually dry and warm weather this summer, has impacted the surfaces that we've seen. Do you think it's impacting the product of the cricket itself? Really good finishes, but not necessarily the most entertaining. We're always looking for a even balance between bat and ball, and that's not something we've often had this series.
Yeah, it's been skewed a little bit. I mean, Lord's got away with it because it was so damn hot over the course of the Test match, and so the pitch deteriorated. Manchester, 21, 22 degrees wasn't going to do the job in terms of making the pitch break and crack and really sort of deteriorate. I mean, I don't know. I didn't think it was a poor pitch. In the way that it had some pace, it had some carry, the ball would turn, would reach slip, all of those things were there. I just think that what the game is lacking, you see the KP tweet about bowlers aren't any good anymore, not as good as they were 20 years ago, which kind of made me chuckle because it felt slightly self-aggrandizing. But there was a part of it that I agreed with, and that was when he listed the spin bowlers there, because I think that's one thing that is missing from the modern game at the moment, and that is your legendary either mystery or just high quality spin bowlers, and I dare say that had any one of guys like Sacklane or Warne or Kumble or any of the others been playing in some of the more slow moving Test matches, that things may have been a little bit different. And so the game is lacking sort of dynamic, high quality, match winning spin bowlers at the moment.
Yeah,
and the only one, and this again, there's caveat to this, because anybody that isn't playing, inevitably gets better in terms of your mind's eye. But unless Kuldeep plays, we won't know, will we? But my feeling is that somebody bowling wrist spin who can turn it both ways would have had a much bigger say on a surface like that than your plain old finger spinners.
I think it's really interesting seeing how Jadeja's gone this series with the ball. Obviously, he's had an amazing tour with the bat, but he has been reasonably unthreatening with the ball across all Test matches, really. And I just wonder about the role of a spinner in England and how being a spinner has just become more difficult over time. I know that DRS was a massive change 15 years ago, but just the number of shots elite players have now, they just have more shots than they used to have. Like, constructing a field for a finger spinner now is more difficult because most players have a reverse sweep that they don't view as a risky shot. That's just a normal shot for players, which means you need more protection behind point on the offside, which you never really had to do previously. I
Yeah.
think that's quite a big deal. Just suddenly,
It is a big deal, but there's part of the sentence, or part of the name of the type of bowler that you're talking about, that is the issue. That's spin. Guys that really get some revs on the ball. Jadeja is a fabulous all-round cricketer, right? And he is on some of the tracks on a lot of the tracks that they played on in India for the bulk of his career, he's unplayable on them, right? Because you basically find a decent length. You can bowl it at middle stump, at middle and leg stump, beat off stump, or rip off stump out of the ground. From days 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, if you get to 4, and it kind of gives everybody a false idea in terms of what your skill is, because the surface does so much of the work for you. Now, when playing here, Dawson's been the same, Bashir's been the same, Sundar has got people out with drift more than spin. But when you're having to work a little bit harder in terms of either your flight, your drift, your drop, all of the other types of things, and eventually as the game gets into the 4th and 5th day, putting huge side spin on the ball, there isn't a great deal to be seen. And so going back to the Peterson clickbait, that's the thing that's missing across the game. It's not pointing fingers at England or India or anybody else. Where are the sort of the rock star spin bowlers, the match winning spin bowlers, that the game had a plethora of towards the end of the 90s and the 2000s. They kind of disappeared and haven't been replaced, and that is the thing that is missing. So because one man's sort of flat pitch is another man's sort of canvas to weave and wreak havoc, and so that is what the game is missing as much as anything else.
To be fair to KP, a lot of the time when old players say things were really good 20, 25 years ago, they're basically just saying, well, that means I had it harder, so therefore I was better.
Look how good I was. Yeah, that was how I read it.
But actually, to be fair to KP, he listed a lot of players he didn't actually play against. I think he was talking more about the difference in bowler that Root's faced versus Sachin, when there were lots of people comparing the two when Root got to number 2.
Yeah, I mean, but again, to do that on the day that Joe Root becomes the second highest Test run scorer of all time is a little bit churlish, don't you think?
Yes, I agree.
I
got called an all manner of things. So Harsha Bhogle basically said, well, all records in cricket will eventually go to English players because they play more Test matches. And I just pointed out that Sachin scored 79 runs per Test match and Joe Root scored 85 runs per Test match. I'm not saying anything else, but I'm saying,
and there you go, bald fact.
And I got called. I'll actually send you some of the stuff, because some of the stuff was creatively was quite creative in the insults. So anyway,
they usually are.
Yeah. Finally, the talking point at the end of the game was around handshakes and the timing of handshakes and England's behaviour after the initial request for handshakes was rejected by the Indian pair as they waited to get their hundreds. What did you make of it all? I thought it was pretty reasonable and blown out of proportion to a degree. I do think some of the verbals from England after the initial conversation, however, I don't want to say went over the line. I'd hate chatting around the line, but
not the line. The line doesn't belong to us. Yes. We know who the line belongs to.
Was perhaps a little bit OTT.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. As with all of these things, there are two sides to it. I think that India having achieved the goal of drawing the game, which is the goal, right? England were perfectly entitled to say, you know what, congrats, well done. You were too good for us to force the victory. We're done. Let's call it a day. And I think India were entitled, perhaps, to go on and get those two guys 100. But the thing that I sort of go back to is this: your goal is to see the game to safety, right? In the same way that in a run chase, your goal is to score one more run than the opposition, or make sure you get over the line. Now, plenty of batters have been left 96, 97, 98, 99 not out in a run chase, and you can't keep the game going in order to satisfy your need to get three figures. And so I can understand why England were irked. I can't understand why they kept on once the decision had been declined, or the offer had been declined, because India were well within their rights to do so. And so, but again, you've been in the field for 5 sessions, another long 5-day test match. Everyone is a little bit sort of overtired, shall we say, and in need of in need of bedtime, and therefore once again sort of tempers sort of frayed over a little bit. But I can see it from both sides. Listen, did they deserve to score a couple of hundreds after playing so magnificently? Yes. Was keeping the entire sort of operation out there for another half an hour while those two satisfied their need for the hundreds? I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if that's what the game is for, but individual milestones are important.
Yeah, I mean, we
some people.
We spend so much time celebrating it. You know, there was a standing ovation when Root got to 120 because it means he scored more runs in his career than Ricky Ponting. We do celebrate,
but that's in pursuit of the match sort of reaching some sort of conclusion. We didn't get one in the end, but I suppose the argument is that the conclusion had been reached. The game was drawn. That was India's goal. They set out to make sure that England did not win that test match, and they achieved that.
Yeah.
And anything after that kind of doesn't matter anymore, you would think. But I absolutely defend their right to have said, no, we're gonna keep you out there until these two blokes got their hundreds, and then we'll all walk off. Listen, it's going to get blown up. My words are going to get blown up. I will be getting creative insults, I'm sure. But it really and truly, it's nothing. But what it does do is it adds a little bit, even more sort of spike for this last test match at the Oval. Both teams bowling attacks on their knees. There'll be changes in both. And let's not forget, India can't win the series now. So, you know, it's game on. India to sort of, to I think, gain some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? To gain some satisfaction out of having played brilliant cricket away from home on this tour, and to go home with something to show for it, and a 2-2 draw would be an epic effort, and perhaps less than they deserved. And I suppose you could still look at it and go, well, you know, they've had the better of a lot of the test matches, or at least in terms of the batting averages and the bowling average and everything else. And for England, it would be right. We've set ourselves this 10 test match goal of sort of like the proving ground of this project for the last 3 or 4 years. And part one is taken care of with a victory against England. And we've shown that we have lots of different strings to our bow in terms of the way that we can play this game. And that is something that we think we're going to need when we go to Australia for the toughest test of the lot. So, great stuff. It is so perfectly set up. The Oval's a great place to do it. Home of cricket, all good.
I just found it very funny that all the final day stuff blew up after England made quite a big deal about bringing in this guy whose most famous thing he's done in life is implementing a no dickhead policy. And that's how England behaved at the end of his first game. That was quite funny.
There was certainly a bit of that on show.
Yeah. But as you say, entertaining finish. And all set up perfectly for the Oval next week. Cool. Cheers for your time, Butch. See you next time.
Pleasure.
This summer, Kia want to help you and your family get closer to the action and create inspiring memories that will last a lifetime. On September 20th, they are giving back to young cricket fans and offering 11 to 14-year-olds the chance to train at the iconic Kia Oval with some of the top coaches from Surrey before playing a tournament right on the pitch itself to show off everything that people learned throughout the day. If you fancy entering that, go through the link in the description. Celebrating India's tour of England, the podcast is proudly partnered with Remitly. We all cheer for every cover drive, every Yorker, every run saved. But every cheer from the stands or from our screens thousands of miles away is more than just support for the team. Every cheer is a cheer for home. What's the team we play for every single day? That's our family. No matter the distance, they're always with us in every moment of pride, joy, and connection. Maybe that's why millions of people choose Remitly to send money to India. With fast, safe, and affordable transfers and great exchange rates with low fees, more of the money that you send reaches the people who matter most. Because wherever we are, home is in every cheer. Ready to give Remitly a try? Download the Remitly app today and enjoy a special offer on your first transfer. Phil, an extraordinary effort from India. It might not have been the most watchable and exciting passage of cricket that we've seen this series, but a remarkable achievement to bat that length of time with very little batting to actually come after Jadeja.
Yeah, with a man down as well, and 2 down inside the first 5 deliveries. It's extraordinary. And you'd have to have a heart of stone not to applaud it. And you'd have to be a one-eyed nationalist not to recognise that in the context of what's been this titanic series, it would have been a real shame if, having lost those 2 up top, they had fallen and you felt like it could have happened. On the one hand, it looks dominant, 4 down over 143 overs, but by a different measure, it could have been done within that first hour, right? You know, and I wouldn't say that Gill got lucky, but there were a couple of very, very tight LBs in that first hour when he was getting into his work. Obviously, then he was dropped by Dawson, backward point, when he was only on around 40 odd, I think. Nonetheless, in the round, to have pulled that off, it's commensurate with what a series it's been. And it would have felt, I think, a little bit unjust to have gone to the Oval with the rubber already dead. That wouldn't have felt right to me. And so all credit, all flowers to India, as they say. It was not pretty, but it could never have been so. But there was a sort of remorseless, relentless inevitability about it throughout the final day, I thought. England had that little window with the new ball, and they took a couple in the morning session of day 5. But after that, it was rock solid, really. And they have in Jadeja a champion scrapper, like a real prize fighter of a cricketer. And we saw it at Lords. He was winning that game, and we saw it here again. And in Sundar as well, you have another very substantial cricketer, right? So it was really, really rousing to see. There will be questions regarding the toothlessness of England's attack, just as there will be questions pertaining to India's relative lack of bite and threat as well. And there'd be loads of questions relating to what the hell these two teams can throw up come Thursday with a sort of debilitatingly small turnaround. And they could look like very different cricket teams, right? Come Thursday, but we can talk about that in a bit. But overall, I thought it was brilliant, and I'm glad for the spectacle. I'm glad for the narrative of the series in its entirety, that they didn't just fall over in this one. And I feared that they might, not just with those early 2 wickets, but they looked bedraggled and done for much of England's innings. We said it, you and I, after day 2, 200 for 2 with England, and we knew it was going to be hard graft and hard yakka thereafter, and so it was, 660 odd. To then be 0 for 2, for the skipper to walk out knowing the noise around him, and to make yet another 100, his 4th in 4 games, can't praise it enough.
And on one of the dailies, we were talking about how the way in which series are remembered changes quite dramatically towards the end. If you take England's tour of India in 2024, it's remembered as a bit of a walloping, 4-1 India. But halfway through the 4th test match, it looked like England were going to lever it, take it 2-2 into the decider. And whatever happens in the decider, then it gets remembered as a classic if it's 3-2 and then goes to a 5th test with it live. It looked like that is how this series could have gone with a day or so, 2 days or so to go. And I'm just thinking more specifically on Gill, how much was asked of him before this series. Before this series, it is worth reminding everyone that people weren't sure if he was good enough to be in India's top 6. His test record was middling. You'd seen positive moments, but he's dropped on that tour of Australia. He's batting in a new position, the big number 4 position, and he's having one of the most historically brilliant tours of England ever. I was looking at the most runs scored by visiting players in England over the years. So top of the list is Bradman in 1930. Then it's Mark Taylor in 1989, but they played 6 test matches. Then it's Viv in 76. Then it's the famous Steve Smith series in 2019. Then it's Lara in 95, again a 6 test series. Bradman in 1934. Sobers in 1966. That's what Gill is already in from a class point of view with 1 test to go. It's an extraordinary individual series.
Yeah, and before this series also, he hadn't got 100 outside of Asia. And now he's got 4 in a series as captain, the first captain in test history to do that in an away test series. And this will be, obviously Edgbaston that comes in a win when he gets the massive double and the other 100 and is threatening the records for runs in a game that has its own place. But I think this will be the 100 that sort of means the most to him. Also because despite that start with the bat, there were people sort of still questioning him coming into this 4th test. First, they would have said about, maybe the slight ease of batting on those first 2 surfaces, but also the circumstances around the 4th evening when he sort of got into a bit of a scrap. And there were suggestions from some Indian pundits in particular that wasn't his game and that he was kind of going away from himself. So to come in a proper scrap is what it was in that 4th innings, in that 3rd innings on that 4th day, when the ball was doing plenty for that sort of that first hour or so of the innings. That was when it was really testing. That in hindsight was England's window really to get through that. And as much as there were times when he was beaten, they were perhaps a little bit fortuitous to get to it. And you looked at Kerr Hall as having that watertight defence in that instance. He also showed a real clarity in terms of how he wanted to approach that, to sort of land a few blows back, to drive beautifully straight down the ground when England did go that bit fuller because they were tired of beating the bat and wanted to take the edge. And he was like, no, I'm good enough if you try and do that to put it away. And then actually, from a leadership point of view as well, I mean, this goes for Gill obviously leading from the front with the bat in that innings, but also probably for Gambier too, who we've, given a bit of stick to be able to, and, the 2 wickets that go in that first over, that looks like, especially Sudarson's a result of, all the time they spent in the field, that series, which as you say, you look at the balance of play across the first 3 tests, there'd been, a game that England had won reasonably, comprehensively, but one that India had smashed England in, and then a real nail biter. The balance of play was almost a bit harsh on India to be 2-1 down going into that 4th test. And then for it all to be kind of slipping away in a way that, as you say, could end up looking quite ugly, to instead to sort of rouse your troops and be like, no, look, I know it's 5 sessions. We're good enough to do this. The surface isn't, we'll get through it. The surface will die down. It'll get easier, I promise. To be able to sort of gather your team in those kind of circumstances and say, let's battle through. There's so much to play for. Like we can, draw this series and therefore, having, it's not retaining the Anderson Tendulkar Trophy, but to, have that, continue that good record over, having drawn the last series 2-2, beat them in India the last 2 times they played them, to, continue that kind of, that advantageous ledger. That is a real prize, even if the series is gone for India now. And Gill deserves credit from that point of view as well as just batting brilliantly. And yes, Sundar, I mean, obviously, Jadeja,
we'll get to him in a bit, cool. But on Gill, I'm amazed by the range of his batting in this series. I think we knew that he had a flashy, aesthetically pleasing 100 in him, but I think to save a test match with 5 sessions to go, I think is something that very, very few young players are able to do. I naturally was just thinking about who are the best young players in the world, Brook, Jaiswal. I'm not sure either of those guys actually have that innings that we saw from Gill in them. And you sort of forget because he's been around for a long time, hyped as a future prodigy for such a long time. Still only 25. Only Sachin has more hundreds by that age for India. And he's actually...
Is that right?
Yeah. So Gill's now got 9 test hundreds. Sachin had 19 before turning 26. And I don't think any other Indian has more than 7. And Gill's got quite a long way until his 26th birthday.
Yeah, it's a very good point regarding his technical acuity, his ability to bat time, is something that we don't necessarily associate with others. And Brook is a good comparison. A bit older than Gill, but not by much. The golden boy of their youth cricket and their emergent cricket, an all-format superstar and all the rest of it. But if we're talking about Brook in the fullness of time, then Could he do what Gill has just done? We haven't yet seen that. We don't know if he has that. We suspect, perhaps not, but you'll see in the fullness of time. But what you saw with Gill, and I think what we've seen with him throughout this series, is a player who's working it out as he goes as well. There's been little technical changes as well that were evident in this last innings. He's mindful, I think, of getting struck on the pads. And so he's just shifted his alignment just a tiny bit to ensure that the bat comes through rather than bit blocked off with the pad and the bat to that nip backer.
Well, Ben's got a theory about the way he's playing the in swinger.
Okay.
So you basically think that he actually is like he's not that bothered by it being hit on the pad when it's swinging in, because he gets out of his crease. So the angles are such that it's actually very, very difficult to get MLW.
Yeah, it's almost like the opposite of what you'd see some players do when you play every ball like it's an in-swinger if it's hooping. So the outswinger beats the edge, the in-swinger you get bat on. He was it felt like doing the opposite, because there were some balls that he was missing by so much that you'd like, well, a batter of his class just doesn't do that. So I do think that it was almost like when you're playing spin, you defend with bat and pad together kind of thing. And you're like, well, hits me on the pad, I'm pretty sure that with that movement it's going down. And if not, then I'll be outside the line and I'll be fine kind of thing, yeah.
You were saying on Gill?
Just that you see him grow as a leader, but you see him grow as a batsman as well. On the side of him as a figurehead, it's unimaginable, the pressure that everyone wants a piece of you. You can never rest. But I thought his body language at Old Trafford was really good, and he was constantly sort of smiling, making light of their situation. And I think that does spread positively through the team. So you saw them towards the end. They hadn't thrown the towel in, and they were relieved more than anything else to get off the pitch. But they were also they were clearly still together. Now that kind of belief and that sort of emotional constancy that flows into the next part of the job, which is to try and somehow excavate a draw from that game. And it all flows from him. I had no doubt that he would be the right bloke for it. It was inconceivable to me that he wouldn't crack Test match batting when you're obviously that good, and your technique is clearly that watertight. And it was an anomaly that he hadn't yet made significant overseas runs to me. And also the fact, as you say, that he's a kid, really, still finding his way and all the rest of it. So I personally wasn't concerned about that. But the way that he has exceeded the most optimistic of expectations, and also combined all of that with it now being clearly his team, there were all kinds of murmurs around him at Headingley that he'd lost control out there on the pitch. Well, that happens when you're getting smashed in the face by a player playing the innings of his life in Duckett. Since then, all right, they went down at Lord's, but since then he's clearly coalesced this team around him. And to do that as a 25-year-old, knowing that you're not just carrying a bunch of very, very highly paid and very understandably self-regarding international sporting superstars on your back, but you're also carrying $1.5 billion back home as well, who live on your every move. To do that at 25, to keep them in the series, that's one hell of an achievement. And whatever happens at the Oval, this has been his summer. This has been his series.
Yeah, on your point, I know you were very optimistic in his ability.
If you will. Some will point to the numbers and say he's a risky appointment. It's only risky until he strums 100 on a packed ground in England, which will be happening very soon. I wrote in my editorial a couple of months ago.
I remember when we did the podcast in the school when he was announced as a new captain.
I was thrilled.
You were thrilled and you were really optimistic. I thought he'd do a good job, and I thought he was a good player. I don't think I knew he was going to be this good.
I don't think anyone knew that he was going to Bradman it.
Yeah.
But his overall success shouldn't come as that much of a surprise when you consider that pressure is a privilege for a player in that kind of position in life. That he's more than comfortable being, or rather he's grown to be comfortable being an icon off the pitch as well. Celebrity girlfriends and modelling contracts and, and topless Instagram posts and all the rest of it. He's clearly at ease with the spotlight, or he's become at ease with the spotlight. And so the combination of that to dream for orthodox technique and the fact that he has now grown to be accustomed to the chaos and the madness around him off the pitch. It made sense. It made sense to me at the time why they appointed him, and obviously now he's gone and done a Bradman. So there we go.
On Washington, Ben, he's a superstar, isn't he? He's also 25. His record with the ball over the last year is amazing. 26 wickets at 22. I think we forget that he took a 7th against New Zealand. And he's like Jadeja in that he is genuinely two cricketers in one. He is on the one hand frontline spinner, but he is also a proper top 7 batter. So if India have another one just after Ashwin retired, just Jadeja reaches his late 30s, it's a pretty handy thing to have.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, at least in this series, he has offered something with the ball that Jadeja hasn't been able to do, actually kind of throughout his career, in that he can deceive batters on pitches that aren't offering any assistance, because he has those skills through the air, almost, bowling sort of little outswingers at times, or ones that are sort of wobbling around and that are, just getting little edges and going to slip. And then yeah, with the bat, he's brilliant. I mean, and again, like I don't want to get too excited, but I almost think his ceiling as a batter might even be higher than Jadeja's, really. You look at it, and Jadeja's obviously got I
think he's a more natural player.
Yeah, Jadeja's got, like, obviously it's a technique that works for him, and he's as Phil says, a real fighter who loves a challenge and a scrap, and is having an absolutely brilliant series, 450s in a row, and then this 100. But Washington he looks like a Test top 3 batter, not just
what he does in first class cricket sometimes.
Exactly, yeah. So and I also think that the importance of him coming through, it can't really be, or you shouldn't. It can't really be overstated for India, not just in terms of overseas cricket. And actually, there's going to be a dilemma at points there because of, how you balance the attack, as we've already seen in this series. But when it comes to coming back home, and, this thing of when Ashwin retires and having gone down 3-0 against New Zealand, can they resume that home dominance? Well, I think with Washington, you've got a bowler who will take wickets home. I don't know if he's going to be Ashwin good with the ball, but they do have a bowler in Kuldeep who I think could be Ashwin good with the ball. So you almost got Kuldeep as your Ashwin replacement with the ball, and Washington is your Ashwin replacement in terms of team balance. And all of a sudden you've got a spin attack that at home is going to be like nigh on impossible to get past, I think. And I can see that India home dominance kind of just resuming with that New Zealand thing, a blip, rather than it being the start of a trend, which I think people might have felt at that time when the 3 greats retire in Kohli, Rohit and Ashwin. So he's a massive, massive player for them going forward.
Has he been able to have any kind of a run in Test cricket in India yet? Or has he always just been carrying the drinks because of the Ashwin reason?
Been a bit of a fill-in. So comes in 4 years ago, does well, then we don't really see him again until the end of last year. He does really well straight away. So, as I said, I think his 7th was the standout performance by an Indian spinner in a series when Ashwin was playing.
Right, yeah.
I thought, by the way, we gave Gill a lot of credit earlier. Also fair to say, not bringing on Washington until the 67th over in the first innings was completely batshit.
It was odd, wasn't it?
Washington was India's best bowler the last time they bowled, and he gets England's good players out with the old ball, and has basically been the only player on either side to take old ball wickets this series. And he comes on and straight away, in not particularly helpful conditions, and straight away picks up 2.
Yes, but and Nasser wrote for the Mail, and there was all sorts of commentators who were, taking it apart. He said his performance as a captain in the field was littered with mistakes, not just the Washington thing, but talking about the end that Brum was bowling from, and Angel Cambodge getting the new ball.
That's a separate conversation.
Yeah. But I also think that, yeah, maybe the tactical side of things, there's some stuff to work out. But I also think that having then had that performance in the field only elevates the innings more, because, again, you come out, you've had a shocker, you think about what you could have done wrong. You're inside the first over, and then you go and strum 100. Sorry, strum, but there you go.
Also, of all of the requirements of a captain, especially a captain of one of the big, behemoth teams, those details. This might sound a bit counterintuitive, but those details, the right end for your bowler, and when to bring on your second spinner, they're the least concerning for me. It's the other stuff that's more important in the immediate term for a young captain. Can you manage it? Can you manage the pressure? Can you score runs? Can you assume the respect of players who are older than you and more experienced than you? The on-field tactics and strategies, you learn that. You'll learn that, and you'll get better at that. He's never had to make these kinds of decisions in a red ball cricket match before, professionally.
I think the other part of that is difficult is that whilst he's very much the figurehead for this India side, this is not his team. This is Gambia's team. So tactically, this is Gambia's team.
And there have been some murmurs, right? That there's been some disagreements.
You can just see it in that he doesn't bowl Shardul, basically. Shardul is picked to give batting depth and actually scored crucial runs in the first innings. So can't dismiss his involvement. But there's clearly a difference in thinking between Gill and Gambia. Gambia is so rigid in how he views how cricket teams can be constructed. It works for him in white ball cricket. That philosophy, left-hand, right-hand combinations all the way through the order, lots of all-round options, both giving you batting depth and bowling options. In Test cricket, he's quite anti the specialists. And it's, I think, hurt India at points this series, even though they're doing pretty well overall.
And makes the captaincy job harder as well, because if you're Gill, you kind of have loads of options and not many of them are any good. So you kind of keep cycling through and trying to find a good one, and then eventually you end on the one who was also good in the last test. But I see how he gets wrong. And also, as Phil says, if he's averaged 30 in the series and been, Brearley / Stokes as a captain, India are, 3 or 4-0 down at this point, as it is. He's averaged 90 in the series, and India are alive heading into the decider.
Phil, why can't England take wickets with the old ball? Because it's extraordinary. I've never seen a series like this in England where they have been so unthreatening for such long periods with the old ball. Is it just the pitches?
In large part, or maybe not in large part, I don't know. But certainly it's playing a part. The numbers are terrifying between overs of 30 and 80. Everyone's averages are retirement-worthy averages. It has been an unusually bat-dominating summer. We did predict this. It's been the case across a lot of county cricket, where bowlers have been neutered and nullified
Sorry, just on that, it's interesting going through the county averages, and all the guys who normally take loads and loads and loads of wickets haven't.
Yeah, indeed. So this is a nationwide trend. It's also necessary to acknowledge England's toothlessness in the same breath as India's. Bumrah went for 100 and plenty for the first time in his Test match career, and he's the best bowler on the planet. But there are some broader concerns for sure with England. When you have a returning 34 or 5-year-old who's been bedeviled by injuries for 3 years, coming back into the bowling attack and being far and away your most threatening bowler, with the ball at any point really, but especially when it's gone soft, is a concern. Bryden Cast, it looked like a game too much for him. I like him as a bowler. I like the overall package that he offers England as a fourth choice seamer, as a fourth choice seamer when he's fit. But he's had his injury problems as well, and he's played now all 4 games, hasn't he? Yeah. And he looked done and dusted for Old Trafford and didn't take a wicket across 45 plus overs across the 2 innings. You're not getting any reverse swing, which is a factor. And at Old Trafford, the outfield is quite verdant and lush, and the pitch itself is generally quite hard. And Wokes was talking about this in an interview, that it's a slightly funny setup, and you feel like you don't get much propulsion in your run-up through the crease because it's quite soft underfoot. Also, of course, means that you don't get the ball scuffing up as much, so you don't get any chance of reverse swing. Not that I think England's bowlers, with the exception of Stokes, are particularly reverse swing adept. Archer's been down on pace throughout the game, and I wondered if this was a deliberate thing to pitch it up a bit further and get a bit more swing. I think it was perhaps for large parts of the game, but also you needed him to just give you 3 overs of real bend in your back extreme pace, and he couldn't summon that in this game.
To be fair on Archer, in the same way that India lose that first test match partly because of drop catches, Archer nicks off Jadeja first ball. There's still 2 sessions of cricket left at that point, and there was no recognised batter to come in.
And
for
from
India.
what I saw, that was his most potent spell across the game. Now that others may disagree with that. I don't know.
He was good second morning when he gets pant with that beauty and he nicks off Jadeja early as well.
Yeah. Okay. You wonder how many back-to-back games he can play. As we know, he'd come in with 18 overs under his belt. And then there is the question of the spinner. Now, whoever England play, they just don't have a spinner, we think, with the components to run through teams. And so the combination of a softening ball, a gun batting lineup that they face, dead pitches, unusually dry conditions, and a spinner that is never going to be a world beater, whoever you pick, seems to be contributing to these sort of run-heavy days, run-heavy weeks. But it's happening to both teams.
Yeah, I just think it's a combination of loads of factors. It's being a run-heavy summer, probably because of the weather. But also just look at the makeup of the two teams. I'm getting the ICC rankings in front of me now. 6 of the top 10 batters in the world, 6 are playing this series. And in the bowling department, only 1 of the top 10 is playing this series, and that's Bumrah, who's not fully fit at the moment. So it does sort of make sense. It's a very inexperienced England attack, and it's Bumrah and Siraj. Even Siraj not that experienced.
Could I just come in briefly? Sorry. The other thing with England's attack is that it's an uneven attack. It has individual components, but it doesn't, I don't think, stitch itself together quite enough at the moment. Woakes is increasingly a specialist new ball bowler, and he's not going to go for many, but you don't really fancy he's going to open up a game in those middle overs. Cast is a similar kind of early nascent quick who can try and bash the door down at times, but can also be quite hittable when the conditions aren't there for him. The spinner, as we say, is a problem, and so it's not a particularly coherent attack at the moment, I don't think, and so it's leading to these sort of pretty grim days, you know, and it's fascinating to see who they're going to pick for this Oval Test match. I can't figure it out.
Who do you think they'll go with?
No, they brought in Overton, by the way, haven't they? So that was announced.
But
this
otherwise,
morning.
the squad's the same.
Yeah, so I think Woakes plays because...
Really? All 5?
Yeah, I think so, because I don't think they will pick him in Australia. So why not just, milk him for what he's worth in this series? And because, as you say, he's not going for runs and he is still, doing some good stuff with the new ball. But I think they rest Archer and Cast. I think Archer, I don't think he bowled badly at Old Trafford, but he's just too precious to risk back-to-back in this instance. And the plan was always, they said 2 of the 5. So I think they'll rest him, and Cast just was a bit off it and so he's the one you're sort of dropping on form, but also the form is there because he needs a rest. So it's kind of a bit of both. And I think they bring in Gus Atkinson as long as they're happy with the workload that he's got. I think they would have picked him for the last game if he had bowled a considerable spell before it. And
all he's done is second team cricket, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there was the thing where Surrey also didn't pick him for basically the same reasons that England didn't pick him. But I also think it is just, has he bowled enough, basically? Has he bowled enough that you can trust the hamstring and, that he'll get through it? And so there'll be a bit of how does he go in the practice ahead of the game. And I think Jamie
He's
Overton,
a rhythm bowler as well, Atkinson.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it would be a big risk. I can understand your thinking.
I think it's home ground as well, right?
Then who does play?
Yeah, well,
because they have picked the squad now. So we're recording on Monday morning, and I knew they were going to drop a squad today, and they have restricted the number of options they have now. Like now we know that Jamie Overton is the only person they've added to the squad. I think Tongue plays because he sort of has to, right?
Well, maybe I would go Atkinson and Overton personally.
Overton,
it's Surrey's ground. Well, I think firstly,
none for 81 or 14 overs or something like that in the county championship.
I picked Tongue ahead of either of those personally.
Yeah,
I also think that the oval might suit Tongue. I think that kind of skidding off a slightly short of a length, getting a little bit of extra kick and bounce when he's bowling well, I think the oval might suit him.
But I think the real question is Stokes, to be honest. I mean, he says he's desperate to play, so he's going to do everything he can to be able to bowl. Do England let him, or is there anyone who can stop him if they think it's not the best thing? That's a real question they're going to have to ask. And also, that's almost why they were pushing themselves so much, I think, at points yesterday. Stokes bowling on that final morning with the biceps tendon injury that he said he's got, sort of rubbing his upper pec between every every delivery because he was like, well, if we win this one, then I get to, basically have a week off next week. Now they haven't done that. And also the other thing with these back-to-back tests, and why I think India have a real chance in this decider, is that India have kind of had 2 more days rest than England with the ball. And you've seen this before where you have these brilliant match-saving efforts, and then in the next game, especially if it's shortly after, the team that was really striving for that win in the previous game, they're the ones who are kind of cooked going into the decider because of all that effort exerted for no reward. So yeah, that is big as well. And I don't know, who are we going to talk about who could potentially come in to help balance the side, or maybe not? I don't know.
On the Stokes question, if he's able to get through the pain, then he'll bowl as much as he needs to ensure that England get a result.
Yeah.
And people are doing their nut over it because of the Ashes. Well, this is an important game of cricket anyway. And also, he doesn't have to do anything for 3 months. He can now rest up. If he has a pectoral injury or a side strain or the problem with his shoulder, or if the hamstring is feeling touch and go, then he has 3 months now and he can just rest. So
Yeah.
I think people have to put this in context, really. Obviously, if he's in too much pain, he ain't going to be able to bowl. But if he can get through it physically, then not only is no one going to stop him, but I wouldn't urge anybody to try and stop him either.
The hamstring would be the one that I wouldn't risk, but that is the thing that seems okay, actually. Everything else seems to be falling apart. The hamstring actually is almost holding everything together at this point.
I think Oates is in the squad as Stokes cover, basically. I think that we've seen that the way they've replaced Stokes when he's been injured in the recent past is they add another bowler to the team.
Well, to come to that, I think you're right. So Dawson could be the one to miss out, right? This is what we've seen at the Oval.
Or what is in if...
What, so it's just 5 quicks? I think it would be more like Dawson 7, and then you've got just like loads of 8s, basically.
That's how I see it. I think on Dawson, I think it's significant that I think you're right in that the attack doesn't quite make sense. And what happened in this test match is exactly what happened in Edgbaston, where the spinner has to just bowl. And I get your point on Dawson's lack of threat. It is some use that he is as economical as he is, because the game just doesn't move forward. So I think they sort of have to play Dawson for that reason. And especially because they are unsure over the fitness of basically all the seamers. And I was sort of thinking during this game, we don't put enough onus on durability as a seamer and all the discussions of who are the greatest. Like, being available is really important. I was looking at the most overs bowled in England by English bowlers in the last 25 years. I was so surprised to see how high up Broad in 23 was. Broad, aged 36, 37, bowled more overs than any England bowlers bowled this series, in a series as compact as this series, and no one really made anything of it.
Yeah.
Whereas now, every bowler across both sides, Siraj apart, really, you're worried about whether they can get through a test match.
The best ability is availability. That's the phrase,
exactly,
isn't it?
Exactly.
And Dawson, I mean, if you're not going to take a wicket between overs 30 and 80, you may as well go at 2 and over rather than 4 and over, and then you're in a better position when you can take wickets in that 30 over stretch again.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I wouldn't drop the spinner, but I'm just thinking what the permutations could be, and if Stokes is a problem, then that's a factor too. Just that Surrey have done this, obviously Surrey are the best team, so they can afford to do that. But that has been their policy for the last 3 years on those pitches at the Oval. This is different. This is a test match and all the rest of it.
Ben, how do you think India are going to go bowling department-wise? Because again, it's unclear. Kambodge didn't have a great debut. Shardul not used very much. Bumrah way down on speeds. There's a stat around the number of times he bowls faster than 140 Ks. So in the first test match, it was 40% of his deliveries. At Lord's, it was 27% of his deliveries. And at Old Trafford, at one point on day 3, he hadn't bowled a single ball above that speed.
Yeah, well, I mean, but there's loads of questions as well because of Pant not going to play as well. And actually, you forget how Pant helps them balance the side too, because he's a number 5 batter. And Dhruv Jurel, he's had a tricky time with when he's had to step in with the swing after the stumps, but also he's not as good a batter as Pant. So then you have a question of, do they try and squeeze Karen Nair back in? Probably not. But then who does bat 5? Do they just go Sundar? They go, fine, you are now a number 5 batter, as you were promoted to in the last innings. So that's one question. And then seam-wise, looks like Akashdeep might well be fit, which would be a a massive boost for them. I don't see how Cambodge can play again. And Bumrah, they've said before the series and really stressed it, saying, he's only going to play 3 of the 5. I personally felt like people could maybe see through that a bit and say that if it came to the Oval and there was a game left to play, then he might well be pushed into the 4th. But given that he was down on speeds in that game, and he had this little trip on the stairs as well that just re-emphasizes how valuable he is, even if he managed to recover from it okay. I would personally be surprised if he were to play, which then means that you maybe end up with the attack of possibly Deep, Siraj and Prasid Krishna,
and Shardul still.
Yeah, I think still Shardul. But basically, I know people are a bit frustrated at this, prioritizing batting depth over bowling strength. But that's fine to be frustrated at it. But that is clearly India's philosophy, and this India's philosophy in particular. So I don't see them changing it now, especially when batting depth has bailed them out on a few occasions, and when Shardul batted okay in the last test. So that's what I would see them doing personally.
Batted for more than 2 hours for his 41 from number 7 in the first innings.
What's the murmurs around Bumrah?
So they have been less clear now than they were before. Before they had cleared, they said he's going to play 3 test matches. Both Gill and Gambhir, since the test match yesterday, haven't been as certain. Gambhir said all our bowlers are fit, and Gill said we're not sure. Sanjay Manjrekar said the other day he's still India's best bowler when he's bowling 130 Ks, and I agree. So, and it's similar to the Stokes point. What are they saving him for?
Right.
India don't have a game as big as this for ages and ages and ages. This is a huge, not era defining, but era altering game. Play him.
Yeah, I'd be amazed if he doesn't play. And even if he plays with a reduced workload and a bit more on the spinners, I'd just be shocked if he's not in that 11, even if, as I say, he's restricted to bowling, say, 15 overs a day or whatever it may be. 12 overs a day. That's still better than 24 from someone who can't get you anything. So I'll just be staggered.
I'm with you. Just a reminder that we have collaborated with the Hertfordshire-based brewery Mad Squirrel to revive the Wisden beer range, featuring the Little Wonder, the nickname of John Wisden, which is a 4.7% pale ale bursting with tropical fruit, layered with aromatic herbs and anchored by a bold, weighty bitterness. And the second beer in this short but sweet lineup is the Afternoon Session, which, as the name suggests, is the perfect choice for an easygoing cricketing afternoon. 3.8% gluten-free pale ale. It's light, fruity, and effortlessly drinkable. You can head to Mad Squirrel's website to create your custom packs of 6, 12, or 24 beers with free next day delivery. Find the link in the description below, and trust us, you won't be disappointed. I've been getting through them during the test match. It's been a difficult week for me.
I've seen this proof as well. I've seen on the Patreon dailies.
Video editor Dan's been off, which has meant that I've just had more work to do.
So your drink quotient has gone up.
Well, you get to a certain point in the day, and it's when you're recording the daily.
Yeah.
It's like, I've got quite a long time left in this day.
Yeah.
So it's been a good companion.
Would you say that you are anchored by a bold and weighty bitterness yourself? I mean, I can certainly claim that. I just wondered if you'd got there yet.
What do I have?
Is that what it was? Anchored by a bold and weighty bitterness?
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah.
Anchored by a bold, weighty bitterness.
I like that. I might stick that on my tombstone.
There was a good moment.
I don't think I am.
There was a good moment when Yas really looked like he needed one, and then this is the first time he'd had one. He cracked one open, drank it, and said, "Hang on, that tastes like water." And these were the test cans we've been sent that did actually contain water, and then found that one. I was like, "Oh no, yeah, then that's delicious." So
Nice.
There were 2 standout performances from 2 true English greats in this game. Ben Stokes, a century and a fifer for the first time in his test career. Just the 4th English player to do so after Tony Greig. Ian Botham, who did it 5 times. And of course, Gus Atkinson at this very ground less than a year ago. And then Joe
5 times is impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Beef. Yeah,
I think Ashwin also did it 5 times, or
Nice.
maybe four times. And then Joe Root, whose 150 took him from 5th to 2nd in the all-time test charts. We talked about it on the Patreon after day 3. As a kid watching cricket, I basically didn't believe it was possible for an English player to be that good. So the best players in the world, Ponting, Lara, Sachin, English players were good, but they weren't allowed to be that good. And I actually just couldn't believe, just looking at that list on Crick Info at the end of the day, that Root's number 2. It just, I just think we're so lucky to have watched a player like him for so long.
It stretches back way before you were a kid as well. The same thing would have applied when I was. That England had the odd sort of lovable anomaly when I was growing up. They had Gooch, who was as old as your dad and was number 1 for this lovely little period towards the end of his career. And then we had Graham Thorpe, who was always in the B team of all-time greats of that era, doing his thing in the face of overwhelming defeat. And then we had Alex Stewart, who could have maybe been it as an opening bat, but then we gave him the gloves because we couldn't have that. And so you just got used to it. And then Vaughan came along.
Did it for about a year.
Did it for less than a year. And I remember him saying, like a test match or two after the Ashes, the famous Ashes, when he ended up number 1, coming home, number 1 in the world. And the next 2 test matches in England, he blobbed up, got nowhere. And I remember him saying, they think I'm the best player in the world. Like, I'm nowhere near the best player in the world. He gave an interview because it's that English flex again. You know your place, sir. Know your place in the food chain. So we had Vaughan, and then he very, very quickly abdicated. And then, of course, you had the Peterson situation. And Peterson felt like he belonged to us, but also belonged to the game or belonged to the world rather than to English cricket. That he was sort of dropped in from some alien place and wore the English cap, but was more this sort of this freak who didn't really belong anywhere. And so he was the next one in line. But since him, Joe's the only one who's actually completed it. He's the only one who, as you say, slips into that category of an all-time great. And you have to really scratch your head to find another, because Alistair Cook didn't slip into that category. Alistair Cook was astonishing at what he did, but you could never put him in that bracket. Root is there. The first one basically of my lifetime, and I've been around for frigging ages.
I think you have to go quite a long way back, even before then, to get to an English player on that level.
Come on then, how far do you go back?
I think you have to go back to...
Go on.
Pre-boycott.
Pardon?
Pre-boycott. So you're looking at May, Hutton, that sort of area?
I think you're looking at a push. Compton, definitely Len Hutton.
Yeah.
Peter May possibly didn't play quite for long enough to really build up that body of work. Hutton is your answer, I would say. And then before that, you're looking at Wally Hammond.
We did an hour on this on the Patreon in October-ish, I want to say. And yeah, it's basically you're just talking about the old blokes, really. You're working out which of the old guys from the 20s to the 50s Root is most comparable to. I think, I also, one thing that...
Compton's a nice comparison in that he had style as well as substance. But then Hutton's a nice comparison as well because he's a Yorkshire opener, but who on his day could cut you to pieces. They're both quite nice comparisons.
Yeah, if you do it by their highest ever ranking peak, the top of the list is Hutton, then it's Hobbs, then it's May, then it's Root from an English point of view.
The point for me though is that, like, obviously where he ranks among all-time English players is interesting, but you've also got this question of, I guess, the best since Bradman and the best after Bradman, all time worldwide, and the conversation, and you look at the 10,000 Test run club. And I think there's been a certain sniffiness even when he gets to that milestone. And the prospect of catching Sachin really kind of comes into view, that he really belongs in that class from some people. And I think that's just bogus. Basically, for me, I mean, I've got some stats as well. But
hit us with the stats.
Well, first, I think obviously Bradman's top. I think for me, Steve Smith is a pretty clear second after Bradman. And I think after that, there's a group of probably 7 or 8 that Root is squarely among now, I think, among your Sachins, among your Laras, among your Pontings. So the 2 things people have said, I think, is one is that England play the most cricket, so therefore Root's going to make the most runs. Someone from England's going to make the most runs. I mean, the 2 points is that to make the most runs, you have to play a lot of tests and score a lot of runs in those tests. But Root, if he gets there, will do it in fewer tests than Sachin. And I think that longevity argument cuts both ways. He's played, just over 12 tests a year, but whereas Sachin played just over 8. But English players generally get burnt out. The stat that you like, Yas, is that no one over the age of 35 has made a Test 100 for England since
Nasser Hussain in 04.
In 2004, exactly. And so that's one thing. You've also got the fact that Root hasn't been able to fill his boots in draws to the same way that previous players has. Sunil Gavaskar made over 6,000 runs in draws. I found
Joe Root has played 25 games that were drawn out of 157.
He's now played in more result tests than Sachin has, and actually averages slightly more than Sachin in those result games. And then the other thing that people say is that cricket was just better back then. Bowlers were just better. KP put out a tweet saying bowlers from 20/25 years ago, which I found it was quite fun to pick apart. So included as contemporaries, Shane Bond, Test debut November 2001, and Curtly Ambrose, final test September 2000. So,
but he was talking about the people Sachin came up against.
Well, but he also talked about, he included some India bowlers in that, right? I think he included Srinath in it. So
okay,
and then also included Lance Klusner, who was 80 Test wickets at 38. And then if you want to list off some bowlers that Root's faced, I'd put down Bumrah, Cummins, Rabada, Bolt, Stark, Ashwin, Steyn, Southey, Lyon, Hazelwood, Philander, Johnson, Shami, Kemo Roach, Molly Morkel, Rangan Harath, who were all among their country's best ever. But and you can just sit around naming guys. So I came up with...
That's what podcasts are all about.
Exactly, yeah. But so a couple of ways you can actually look at it, I think, is if you look at the average of the top sevens in the games that each player has played. So I went down the whole of the 10,000 Test Run Club. So the peak, the best, the guy who had the best top sevens in his games was actually Sachin. His top sevens in his matches averaged 40.94. Root's is the second lowest, 35.66.
So you're saying that compared to the other players who are playing in the games, Root is towards the top of that list in terms of outperforming the average.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you do it by team, because obviously that can be pulled down or pulled up by if the bowlers in your team are especially good. So Steve Smith, for example, the top 7 in his matches averaged 35. The top 7 in his team averaged 40 because he's playing alongside Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark, etc. But Root's barely rises at 36.34. So he's, I think, third on both counts in terms of if you take a ratio of his overall average to either of those two things. He's basically almost like 1.5 times better, 1.4 times better than the other batters in his games. And then the other thing, is that the people talk about the hole in his record being in Australia. I think there's some mitigation to that, but at the moment he averages 35 there, no hundreds. Fair enough, you can point out as a whole. But basically everyone in that club has some sort of hole. Ponting averaging 26 in India, Callis averaging 35 in England as well. And actually, what that kind of could mask is how uniformly excellent Root's record is everywhere else. So he's played 2 tests in Bangladesh, fine. But apart from that, and that Australia sort of anomaly at the moment, his next worst record is in India, where he averages 45. And he averages over 50 in 6 countries, which is more than Sachin did as well.
Sachin has a brilliantly covered record as well.
Sachin is the only player.
He's probably the best at not having a hole.
He's the only player to average 40 in 10 countries. So that is brilliant, and he's got Root there. I think the one thing Root needs to avoid to be in this conversation when he ends his career is to have a long sort of tail where your average drops off. So Sachin in his last 23 tests average dropped by 3 points. Ponting's dropped by almost 4 in his last 26 tests. And actually even quite a short tail can have a big impact. Yunus Khan's average dropped by 2.25 points in 9 tests at the end when he just sort of faded away right at the end. But if Root can avoid that, as, for example, Steve Waugh did, then he will end up with a record. And I think just looking at him, he is as good as anyone, as I say, kind of bar Steve Smith since Bradman.
Are you going to say something?
No, I enjoyed that. Enjoyed that a lot. You really have done the numbers.
The one other thing I just wanted to say on Root is I really like it when he gets to 100 these days, because it's an appreciation not just for the innings that people in the ground have seen, but also for his whole career, because of his age, and because that a lot of people who go to cricket games probably don't go every year. And even if you do go every year, the next time you go, England might be bowling for a day. It might rain for a day. So this might be, for a lot of the people in the ground, the last time they watch Root. And the round of applause just goes on longer than anyone else getting 100 these days, which I think is really nice.
A friend of mine messaged on our group the other day and said, do you realise that there'll be a day in the future when Joe Root won't be batting for England?
No. No, God, don't say that. Don't say that. I also think that the nature of what Root does compared to other English modern greats is just different. So Stokes obviously he's a headline maker. He's got more of the standout moments. But I think there's something in terms of how you watch a game of cricket and how you follow cricket over a long period of time. Like for a lot of people, it's a form of escapism, and Root's the comfort. He's the guy who's always there. He's the one you look at the scorecard and you hope Joe Root's in. You get a notification that wickets fall, and you're like, I hope it's not Joe Root. And I think that relationship that English cricket fans have with Root is just different to anyone I think I remember in my lifetime, at least.
I think for all that Ben's points regarding all the other legends, with the exception of Sachin, having certain black spots in their overseas record, their away record, I think it's a really good point to make. Kane Williamson is another. He averages 30 in England, for example. And it definitely offers good mitigation against any kind of shade that's thrown against him. Nonetheless, he knows that in his dotage, he will look back on his experiences in Australia and it will gnaw away at him if he doesn't have a good winter, both results-wise and his own personal output. His experiences in Australia have been particularly challenging in that he went there against Johnson in the early part of his career and was dropped for the only time in his life. Even Bradman was dropped. It does happen. And that was the hinge point really in his career, because he realised, I can't just sit on my bat. I can't be like an old world Boycott-esque opening bat or top order bat. It just doesn't happen anymore. So you're going to have to find a way to take it back to them, because otherwise they're just going to blow me away. And that was his big taking from being dropped for Sydney for that one. So that was a challenging tour for everyone who was on it, and for him as a young kid. 17, 18 was his first one in charge. No,
well, his first series was, but he was shorn of his great all-rounder and deputy going into it. And
his first one in charge, and I think he made 4 50s.
5 50s and 5 tests. He averaged 45 in that series.
Yeah, okay. And I remember he made the 87 in the first test match as well, and I think he was not out overnight, 80-something not out overnight, and it didn't happen. And it felt agonising. And I've spoken about the Sydney experience many, many times. And then the third tour was the COVID tour.
Null and void.
Well, it's certainly not that, but it certainly deservedly has a massive asterisk next to it. And he, you got to remember, had been in charge for 2 years through COVID as the only one to stand up. And the more you hear about that period, the more the players simply did not want to be there. They'd run their race. The ECB were bending over backwards in cahoots with Cricket Australia just to persuade them to get on the plane. And Root was in the eye of that storm, on Zoom calls every night and all the rest of it. And so, look, before they all come at me, I'm not making excuses for 14 test matches and no hundreds, but there are mitigating reasons for why he has underperformed. The big question is now, with a clear slate and a good side around him and no pressure other than the pressure of the past, can he overcome that tendency just to play that shot outside off stump that's brought him 5,000 runs behind square on the offside, and which he plays in his sleep in England? Can he find the right balance to play that at the right times against Australia's quicks? Because that's what's got him into trouble technically before.
Just made me look up England run scorers in 2021. Joe Root, 1,708 runs at 61. Second on the list, Rory Burns, 530 runs at 27.
Right. They were also the only team playing as well.
He carried a not very good team on his shoulders and was as good as he's ever been in some of the most difficult external circumstances.
Yeah, and he turned up in Australia with a team that was clearly not capable of doing the job.
Ben, Rehan Ahmed, 113 wickets in the game this week for Leicestershire. His fourth 100 of the season. Only Saif Zaib has more hundreds in the county championship in 2025. He's not bowled a lot this season, partly because of conditions, but also because of an injury that he had. So it meant that he was playing as a specialist batter. He had a good blast campaign as well, averaging more than 40 with the bat too. Quiz question. I know you know the answer to this. Who is the last Leicestershire player to score 100 and take 13 wickets in a game?
Oh, well, I mean, it's a good question, but how do you pronounce it? That's the question.
Well, I'll ask Phil. I reckon I'm interested to hear what Phil says.
Is Phil giving the answer or am I giving the answer?
You're giving the answer,
Okay.
and then we discuss how it's pronounced.
Dick, and I'm gonna say it's Dick Puffer.
Pougher. He's the last player for Leicester to take 13 wickets a game and score 100 in the same.
Spell
game.
it again.
Pougher. I went Dick Power.
Power.
I went Dick Power.
That's a power for
and
me.
He's gone Dick Puffer.
Yeah, but it's a great name.
Well, he would do, wouldn't he?
1894 at Leighton against Essex.
1894.
Yeah.
It's a great name because however you pronounce the surname is a bit funny. Like, because Poo is another option. That's funny.
I mean, I was thinking I can pronounce Phil Simmons, so yeah, okay. So that's who it is, the power. Dick the Power.
And the last English player to do this in a first class game was Botham in the Jubilee Test.
I was going to say that. Yeah. But now you've said it.
Is he going to play Test cricket soon?
Beefy?
No.
I think not that soon, to be honest. Now that he's not played the Oval Test, I wondered if they might just, someone has a completely outlandish county performance, someone who you already like. There's a bit of questions over how you're going to balance the side. Your star around is a bit injured. Would they sort of see an opportunity to get him in? Maybe if they'd won the Test, maybe that could have been a different conversation, but they haven't. So he's going to be at Leicestershire for another week. And then I think now he should be in that Ashes squad, even though it's not clear exactly with the balance of Team England have favoured how he fits into that exactly. But Ashes tours have a tendency to go in strange and wonderful directions.
He's playing in the 5th Test, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you want someone who can help you field creative teams, here's someone who can help you do that. I think his time maybe will come after that, when it will be sort of the start of obviously middle of the World Championship, but the start of a new cycle in terms of Ashes and facing India for next summer perhaps. But I think down the line, I can see a world in which he is actually kind of the Stokes replacement as a top 6 batter who can, is he going to be your Graham Swan as a spinner who can go at, 2.5 threes, plug and end up on day one? Maybe not. Is he going to be a bowler who can add to a Test match attack? I think so. We've already seen it. He's bowled well, a lot of the time when he's taken the field for England, not just on his debut, bowled well on that tour of India as well. He's not your traditional leg spinner in terms of having a massive leg break, but he's got a googly that turns. And so if you've got a leg break that you can turn enough and a googly you can turn, you can challenge batters on off stump, and they're going to have to pick you every time. Otherwise, you're going to beat them on one of the edges now and again. And also, he's really good against the tail. That's when they've used him this season, less shit. And he comes on against the tail. That's why he's averaging sort of, sub 20 coming into this game, because he'll take 3 for 8 at the end of an innings. And that is something that England have not been great at as well. So he might allow you, if he bats at 6 or 7 with Smith, maybe moving up to number 6, thinking very long term here with 4 seamers. And I can see that side making sense. And that is where I see it. But it's been a completely breakout season. He's a brilliant player, and it's been very fun to see.
Yeah, 641 runs at 45, 20 wickets at 15 in the Championship.
Chatted to James Taylor. Did that ever make it onto a podcast?
Yes, it did.
It did, right?
It did,
okay.
yeah.
Probably people have heard it then. But he was very interested on Rehan Ahmed, and he was keen to accentuate that he's a batter who bowls rather than the other way around. And that's how they see him. That's how they're using him.
In red ball cricket, in white ball cricket.
Specifically in red ball cricket. And he didn't have a massive amount of truck with the idea of him playing as a spinner in Test cricket. It wasn't like it was more like he just let that question slide away. Taylor is more interested in him as a batter at the moment, and he said that him and Ravi Bopara are the 2 most talented players he's ever seen in English cricket as batsmen. So that's how they see him. I agree with Ben absolutely that he could be a Stokes replacement. I wonder if in there somewhere in England's new way of doing things, he ends up as a top 5 or 6 batsman who bowls sometimes not at all, and other times will get you through 40 overs in a Test match.
He bats 3.
This is it. This is it.
He's moved up the order. He used to bat 7. He's bats 3. Opened the batting for a bit earlier in the season.
Yeah. What Jimmy Taylor said to me is that he's still figuring out how much he can do with the bat, that there's a sort of surfeit of talent. if that's a far better place to be than the other way round. You want to be trying to build in defensive foundations and patience and, all those cliches about going up and down the gears. You want to build that in rather than try and find shots that you don't necessarily have. He is an intriguing talent. And I've said it on there before, but I thought that spell he bowled in that third test match, I think in Pakistan, when he was throwing the ball, and he looked to me like a test match bowler for a whole session, and he bowled 12 plus overs, and he looked threatening, he looked accurate. It looks like he bowls at a good test match pace, which we haven't had with certain leggies. Matt Parkinson, for example, was found that in the end, good players could adjust to his pace. Rehan gets it through just that little bit quicker with a bit more energy. He's a genuinely fascinating player. They'll be playing top flight cricket come what may next year, Leicestershire, whether it's in a newfangled conference thing or with them having been promoted. That's the year really when you want to see on different pitches against considerably better opposition, and there is a big jump up. Can he replicate what he's done this year, next year? If he can do that, then anything's possible for him.
If you want our reaction, by the way, to the latest round of county championship cricket, head to the Patreon. We've got a weekly show at the end of each round.
Essex won.
Essex did win.
God, that was a big one.
Needed it.
That's a big win.
Ben, you got a new jumper.
Well, no, it's also probably the oldest piece of clothing. I own a few vintage items, so
yeah, you're a mess.
This is David Gower's sleeveless from his Leicestershire days. I think from the 70s.
I am tempted to call bullshit because it's
so beautifully new, isn't it?
It's so new. It's so blemish free.
The red stripe logo looks genuinely brand new.
Yeah.
I'll drop DIG a message after this just to clarify.
You know what? I would love a David Gower original. I would also love the anecdote of being scammed by David Gower.
And I don't want to cast aspersions here, by the way. Honest as the day is long is the notorious DIG, and I'm sure it's all above board, but it is uncommonly in pristine condition, considering it's 40 years old.
Yeah, no, the greens are greening and the reds are redding. It's nice.
It's fabulous, and it really does suit you, I have to say.
Something else that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Offer for the magazine.
Yeah. Said it before. I'll say it again. It's still available for at least 2 weeks. Subscribe to the magazine for a year. Price is starting at 40 quid. And you're automatically entered into a draw to win one of 2 cricket bats, both of them worth an obscene amount of money, because they are these days. 521 quid or 623 quid for 2 DSC bats. You get thrown into a draw. As automatically as a new subscriber, you're in with a chance to win. We will put the details on the bottom of the show notes and stick a QR code on the YouTubes, please. Yeah?
Go do it, Dan.
Yeah, lovely. Come on, Dan, pull your finger out. And all the details are on the subscription page, easily found on wisden.com. So please just do go and do it. Obviously, the magazine's great, but you get to win a couple of beautiful cricket bats.
And if you want to win my David Gower Leicestershire sleeveless, you can't. It's mine.
Everything's got a price. Everything's got a price. That would be very Gardner to sell it on, wouldn't it?
Can we genuinely try and verify with the great man himself?
Oh, I will do, yeah.
Amazing if he just actually didn't know that this auction had
No, he tweeted
place.
about it. He tweeted about it. He loves Twitter.
Somebody could have hacked into his account.
I'm going to take a photo of you right now and then send it to the big man.
Can I take off the hat then? There we go.
There we go. Oh, my word.
I played a game this summer that Gower umpired. And
Yeah.
it was a remarkable experience because I felt like I was a kid trying to impress the coach.
Yeah.
I was fielding at mid-wicket whilst he was at square leg, and I was like, I've really got to walk in with purpose. I was like, what am I doing? I'm nearly 30. Gower doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, well, I've batted with him when he's umpired, and inevitably I was total rubbish. Just couldn't cope with it. All you could see is that man just standing there. And yeah, I could barely hold the bat.
That is everything for today's show. Cheers, Phil. Cheers, Ben. It's been an amazing series so far, all set up perfectly for the finale at the Kia Oval.
Prediction India to win 2-2.
Yeah, same.
That's what I went and start the series, and I'm sticking to it. And I think the runes are there for me. I think India will nick it.
England also lose every last test for series they ever play at the moment.
Right, in history.
Something like that. I think three of the last four.
Right, there you go.
4 of the last 5.
I think it's so hard to call just because we have no idea.
Boring.
We have
Just
no
say a
idea.
number, mate.
We have
Just
no
say a
idea who the bowlers are going to be. We have no idea what the pitch is going to be. But gun to my head, I probably still would go England. Anyway, it has been a brilliant series so far. Kia are proud to be sponsors for both Surrey and the Wisden podcast. We hope you feel these partnerships have given you the opportunity to get closer to the action this season with Kia's movement that inspires moments. There are still plenty of opportunities to get involved. If you'd like to find out more, please click on the link in the description or search Kia Cricket.